Hello, everyone. It is so very good to see you. My name is Mark Dolfini of Strategic Boardroom, and you are here today to learn to sell without fear or the ick. Has anybody ever been in the selling situation where you're like feeling the ick? Well, we're going to be talking about that today and how to avoid all of that. So, whatever it is that you do, I got some people piling into the room. It's really good to see you. Um, Let me know where you're from and what it is that you keep busy with. What are you here for? What are you hoping to learn? And maybe what kind of problems do you feel like you're running into when you're selling? I will share with you this. No matter how bad you are, you could not have been worse than I was. I hate the one-upmanship game for sure, but I was pretty bad at it. And I just want to let you know that whether I was selling individually or selling from stage, those are two different skill sets. So we're not really going to be talking about selling to a crowd today. That's actually a different webinar that I teach. But selling in general, selling one-to-one, those are the sorts of skills that you can learn. So no matter how bad you might think that you are, you absolutely can 100% get better. So if you're just joining, see some other people joining right now. Let me know where you're from and what kind of line of work that you do and what you're hoping to get from today. All right, so let's get to it right now. Just one quick thing. I just wanted as a quick housekeeping thing. I know we're going to be on here for probably about an hour or so, depending on how many questions that you have. If you have questions, just go ahead and type them into the comments. I will answer those when I get to a natural stopping point, natural break point. But do your very best not to multitask, because during this period of time when you're trying to learn something and do something else, I don't want you to miss a golden nugget that could really change things for you, and might really be the game changer for you, right? Might be the thing that is the missing piece that you've been struggling with for quite some time. So let's train our brains. This is your CEO time. You're plugged in for this next hour or so. And for those of you who have signed up through Eventbrite, just know that you will be getting a copy of this sent to your email. So for those of you who are watching this live on YouTube, obviously you get to watch it forever. Okay. All right. So let's get to it. Thank you so much for joining. All right. So we are here and we are selling. And this is something that I brought up earlier is there's a difference between selling one-to-one and selling one-to-many. And that is different. They are similar in some ways. There's some foundational things, no matter what you're doing in selling, that you have to do when it's in a different environment of selling one-to-one versus selling one-to-many. And some people can't make that jump. Some people do really, really well in one, but not the other. I tend to be a little bit better selling one-to-one versus one-to-many, just because I'm more conversational. But I did learn those skill sets. I had a mentor who really helped me, learned how to sell from stage, and not just from my mentor, but many other people who I've watched when they're selling from stage or when they're selling from a webinar or whatever it is that they're selling from, when they're broadcasting one to many, there's certain things that you have to do that maybe wouldn't be as appropriate to do in a one-to-one setting. So I just want to make that distinction right now. We are going to be focusing specifically on the one-to-one selling model because there are different things that are important, that are relevant. All right. So the main thing is that we have to stop and think. We have to stop thinking of the people that we're trying to get. We don't want satisfied customers. That's what I know that you're thinking, well, why wouldn't you want a satisfied customer? Well, think about this for a second. Maybe you have gone out to eat dinner and over, I don't know, last couple of weeks, and you were with your significant other. You go in, you order, you're seated reasonably quickly, you're seated at a table, you're handed your menus, they bring out the water, you order something, it comes in a reasonable amount of time, the wait staff checks on you, it's good, right? Food is tasty, right? And you're asked if you want dessert, you skip dessert, you're kind of full, you get the bill's okay, and then you leave. Is there anything about that encounter that's more than just satisfied? right? Satisfied is the base standard. Satisfied is the default setting, right? Even if you're a happy customer, that's maybe the default setting plus a little. I would argue that when you're in the selling mode, you want a raving fanatic about your business. And I think that that's one of the things that you have to recognize when you're in your selling mode. And trust and know, in a business, especially a business that is trying to grow, you are always in selling mode. So I don't want you thinking that, oh, well, I'm not good at sales or something else. No, this is where you really have to be dialed in and saying, no, I want to create raving fanatics out of my business rather than just satisfied customers. And that is a really important point, because you want to be selling them not just the feature of your business or the benefit, but you want to go all the way to the meaning. What's the meaning that you're selling them? What's the fantasy that you're selling them? And that is what will create raving fans. If you're selling them the feature, you're selling them 500 horsepower. Okay, what does that mean, right? No, I don't know. Like 500 horsepower can mean a lot of things, right? What's the benefit? Okay, well, the benefit of 500 horsepower is you go from 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds. Okay, well, we're getting there, but we still don't have the meaning. The meaning of 500 horsepower and 0 to 60 in 3 seconds means you're going to feel like the coolest dude or the coolest chick on the street. Make sense? And that is how you create and connect with raving fanatics. So your whole job is to create raving fanatics, and your whole job, and you do that by creating trust with the prospect. And you do that by demonstrating other things. There's lots of ways that you can do this. The fastest way to create trust is by demonstrating competence, by demonstrating you know what you're talking about. So if you're talking about 500 horsepower and you say, yeah, I think you can go from 0 to 60 in like, I don't know, maybe 5 seconds, 6 seconds. You're like, well, that's not very fast, right? That doesn't tell me much. That tells me that you're not competent. So you have to demonstrate and you'll be building trust the more that you're demonstrating your competence. So let's look at this here with, I wanted to go to an American football reference here for just a minute. For those of you who maybe don't know Vince Lombardi, he was the head coach for the Green Bay Packers. And from the years 1961 and 1962, all the way from 65, 66, and 67, they were the champions, the football champions of that year, right? Now, I don't think they actually had they don't think they called it a Super Bowl until maybe 63 or something like that. But they were the champions of the 61, 62, 66, and 67 seasons. But they never had a losing season, meaning they were always, they were winning teams. These were winning teams that Vince Lombardi was walking into. Well, here was the interesting thing. They had a really heartbreaking season going from 60 into 61, and they lost the national championship game. And Vince Lombardi walks into training camp in 1961, heading into the football season, the 1961 football season. Keep in mind, they had a very winning record prior. In fact, they had won their conference, but they lost the championship game. Okay, so these were no greenhorns that he was talking to. These were hard men. These were men that had played football most of their lives. And he walks in and he extends his right hand and he says, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And from that moment forward, he went through every basic football reference there was. He went through blocking. He went through tackling. He went through tying their shoes and putting on their pads. And he did all of that because he wanted to readdress the basics. And I'm bringing this story up is because it was after that they won the championship game in 61 and 62 and 65 and 66 and 67. And he ended up leaving, I think Vince Lombardi ended up leaving the Green Bay Packers after that winning season in 67. But the thing was, he was phenomenal. Like that kind of a winning record was unheard of during that period of time, and he became a legend. And he became a legend because he was teaching the basics. And the reason I bring up this story is because I hear a lot of folks, they get really hung up and they say, yeah, the stuff that you're learning, yeah, I was just kind of looking for that one golden nugget of things. I'm doing all the stuff you're doing, but I'm not really trying. Are you really doing the basics? Are you really? Because there's a lot of times where I get into conversations with folks and I'll be telling them some stuff that's around the basics. And if they're not doing the basics, how are you possibly hoping to learn anything more advanced? Right? It just isn't going to happen. So if you're looking for the golden nuggets, but you're not doing the basics, look, I get it. They're boring. The fundamentals are they're not sexy, but that's what's going to really move the needle for you. So again, just consider it. I understand that they're boring, they're repetitious. And again, boredom comes from repetition, but you cannot achieve mastery without it. You just can't achieve mastery without repetition. So let's talk about why people often hate selling, why they have a bad relationship with selling. And you feel like you have to convince someone to do something that they don't want to do, or you just hate asking people for money. You kind of get to that uncomfortable, oh my gosh, here it comes, I got to ask for money. And they just hate it, right? So, or this is another one where you feel like you're bothering people. And this is something that I hear a lot of times from salespeople who don't want to call people back. They don't want to follow up. And they do it in a weird way, like, hey, I'm just following up. Oh gosh, really? And rather than developing a relationship with them, rather than recognizing that these people are on different periods of the buying train, that buying parade, they might just not be there, right? They may not trust themselves to have to tell you no, and they really don't need it. But when you're reaching out to them and you're delivering value that may not have anything at all to do with the sale, and you're reaching out to them, you're saying, hey, I wanted to make you aware that there's pricing changes, there's this or something. You mentioned that you like the Green Bay Packers, for example. Well, I know that did you get to see that game? What a great game, right? Like, you're bringing value more than just the selling relationship. Because for me, I'm always more interested in the relationship than I am the sale. And that has worked for me really, really well. So I just want you to, as we head into the agenda here, I want you to start thinking about those things, about delivering and creating raving fans, and generating and creating trust, and delivering high value things to your potential avatar. So let's talk about the systems. We're going to talk about the Viper framework really quick, and then we're going to get into the 4 core functions of business. We're going to talk about the discovery call, and then we're going to get into the actual sales conversation. So these are things that are really important to think about when you're heading into the selling conversation. Not just about generating and creating trust, but all of these other things from the discovery call into the actual sales conversation. And then finally, we're going to be looking at different success strategies. So what I'm going to be talking about here, just starting out, is a strategic approach to managing your life and your business. So again, we're talking about the selling conversation here. Well, in the Time Wealthy Advantage, I'm not here to push or promote the book. If you'd like to get a copy and you live outside the US, your best bet is to get it from Amazon. They can handle fulfillment way better than I can. Inside the United States, however, I actually just got a whole new stack of books in because I was sold out for a little bit, but I do have some new supplies. So if you are interested in getting your own signed copy of the Time Wealthy Advantage, you can purchase it if you go to strategicboardroom.com. It is right on the main page. You cannot miss it. It's the first thing right smack in the middle of the page. Can't miss it. So the reason I bring this up is not to promote the book, but really so it explains and unpacks the Viper framework, the Viper methodology. So let's get into that. The Viper method is an acronym for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. And you're going to be looking at your business from the top down, which starts with vision, goes through infrastructure, process, execution, and then reporting. So let's look first and foremost around vision. Now, vision is, you have to consider vision in 2 ways, right? You're thinking about personal vision and business vision. The reason why I bring this up, and I know we're going to be talking, 98% of what we're going to be talking about for the rest of this session is going to be about business. But I am going to be talking about a personal vision for just a hot second. And the reason why is because I know a lot of business owners and I know a lot of salespeople that they are just so focused on the sale. They're so focused on their business that they never spend time to actually think and construct of what a personal vision should look like. So I just want you to think about a personal vision has nothing to do at all with income generation. Just think about that. So when you're thinking nothing about income generation, it's all about life output, then think about it. Where do you want to go in life? What is that? Again, let's say you woke up with $30 million or 30 million pounds tomorrow. Okay, fine. Where do you want to go? What do you want that to look like? And the reason why you're thinking about that thing is because now with that defined, now with personal vision defined, now you can think about business vision, because that's going to ask you the question, great, how are we going to get there? How are we going to get there? So now with the personal vision defined, you can reverse engineer a business vision that's going to be in alignment with your personal vision. It makes sense, right? And the reason why this is so important right now to think of this, and I've heard this from young people, older people, they say, yeah, let me make that $50,000-$60,000 a month, and then I'll worry about the better life thing. The unfortunate thing is, it doesn't ever work out that way. Or seldom it doesn't work out that way. I have sat next to probably dozens, if not hundreds, of business owners who have done really well in their lives, making 6 and 7 figures net. And you know what they were worried about? They were worried about getting an extra comma in their bank account. They were worried about making that extra million or 10 million. And meanwhile, their lives are in complete shambles. Everything going on at home was a mess. And I will tell you this, is that when things aren't right at home, things aren't right anywhere. So I just want you to be focused on the right things and what you're actually doing it for. So this is the danger in creating a business vision without ever giving any consideration to a personal vision, is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. So I want you to take that time. I want you to spend that time. Yes, I'm not saying business vision is irrelevant. It just can't come first. Because after you created that personal vision, then we're going to start unpacking the business vision, and you're going to start that by doing actual research. You have to know who you're actually going after. You have to research the market in terms of what it's needing, what it's asking for. What are the people saying? What are the problems that are keeping them up at night? You have to know your people. You have to know your market. You have to know your product or service cold. There can be no wishy-washy, not sure answers when it comes to your product or service. They may ask you a question, say, hey, can it be applied in this way? You're like, you know what? I actually never thought about that. It's okay that you don't know some things, but you really have to know your product or service really, really well. And you actually have to know one other thing, and that is understanding their level of pain. If you don't understand their level of pain and what's causing that pain, you're going to have difficulty in selling to them. It just is. Because again, selling is about problem solving. It's about bringing something to them that they actually need. All right. So let's unpack this through this lens. So you're thinking, okay, well, that's great. How do I research? You're going to research in 3 ways: through core purpose, core values, and client avatar. You're going to get these 3 things dialed in. Let's talk about each one of these. Your core purpose is specifically what business are you in, and specifically what problems do you solve. And it's really important that you be as specific as possible. This is interesting because I run into a lot of folks who, especially serial entrepreneurs, where they're going to say, "Oh yeah, I'm in real estate." Okay, that doesn't really tell me much. Do you buy? Do you sell? Do you wholesale? Are you a house flipper? Do you rent? What is it you do? And I get a lot of people, especially serial entrepreneurs, well, I'll do it all. I can do it all. Okay, here's the problem with that. When you have all of these different core purposes, it gets very, very difficult for people to know what it is that you're actually, what business you're actually in. And as a result, people don't know if they can trust you. They don't know if they can really trust you, or they're like, well, I'm going to go with the guy who I know really does that one thing, not sells insurance and also dabbles in real estate, and also I can buy my essential oils from. No disrespect, but the problem is it becomes very fragmented for you, and it becomes very fragmented for your client avatar. So that's number 1. That's your core purpose. And it's really important, excuse me, it's really important that you get clear in terms of who or in terms of what that is. Next is your core values. Your core values is what matters to you about this business, and how would the world be worse off if you were no longer in business. That is critical, because if you're not really clear in your core values is what helps determine your company culture. You might be thinking, okay, well, why would I care? Because your company culture and your company brand are inextricably linked. Your company culture is what's experienced by the people inside your organization. Your company brand is what people experience from outside your organization. That's why it's so important. So when you really have a really strong set of core values that are defined, that are written down, that are reviewed every day, and we have 5, and they are reviewed every single day whenever we have a meeting, those are really, really important things. So again, I just hopped off a call a little bit ago, and I just realizing, like, even though it was a really short-term pop-up meeting, we should have reviewed our core values. We do that at every single meeting, right? That one we didn't. But the thing was, whenever we have an agenda, a set meeting, we almost always, when it's an agenda, it's part of our agenda. Like anytime we have a set meeting, it's our wins and victories and then our core values. So every single time we hit it, during the pop-up meetings, sometimes we forget. But this is what I'm saying, that their core values are always in front of us and the rest of the team, so we know what we're about, and we never forget what things are important to us. So we talked core purpose, we talked core values. Now let's talk client avatar. The client avatar is who specifically and ideally do you want to serve. And this is a little bit more relevant to marketing, but it is absolutely relevant if you are a salesperson that also sources their own leads. So this is going to be important, and you need to think about them in terms of their geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics. Their geographics is pretty straightforward, right? It's where they are, where they live, where they want to be served. The demographics is who they are. Are they married? Are they single? Are they educated? Are they are they old? Are they young? Are they rich? Are they poor? Right? These are the sorts of things that you need to be thinking about. And then when it comes to psychographics is how they think and how they buy. So when you're getting into the mind of the client or the potential client, I want you to think of ALIA. This is psychographics. And you're going to be thinking ALIA. That is their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations and goals. When you know their attitudes on life, what's their attitude towards salespeople? What's their attitude towards education? What are their attitudes towards politics? All of these different things matter, because there's certain things you may want to embrace with them, and there's certain things you may want to avoid with them. What are their lifestyles? Are they jet-setting young couple, or are they kind of a little bit older but homebodies? Hey, there's a lot of young people who are homebodies. What's their lifestyle like? What are their interests? Do they like American football, or do they like World Cup? Do they like NASCAR or Formula One? Those are the things that are important for you to know their interests, again, so you can connect with them at a deeper level. And finally, their aspirations. If there's one thing that I really want to know about my avatar, as deep as I possibly can, I want to know their aspirations and their goals. Because me, as the salesperson, I know that I want to bring them, whether it aligns with my product or service or not, I want to bring them opportunities that can help them achieve their goals. That makes sense. So when I can do this, and I can be really intentional about bringing things to them that help align their goals, and that might be something that costs you nothing more than just a few moments of effort, where if they were trying to connect with someone at a certain organization, and you're like, oh, wait, I actually know a guy named Joe at that organization. Let me connect you with Joe, and we'll see where it goes, right? That would make sense, because you know their goals and aspirations. So when you're thinking of their psychographics, you want to think of the acronym ALIA. So that is the 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar. And that is really, really critical. Yes, you will be sent a replay on this, Joe. I'm sorry, Josie. You will be sent, yes, that will be emailed to you. So thank you. Thank you for that. All right. And for those of you who have any questions, go ahead and type them in the comments section, and I will answer those once I get to a breaking point. or not a breaking point, a break point, natural break point. So that's the 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar. And when I get hired as a strategist, or I'm going into an organization, being hired as the CSO, the chief strategic officer, and I'm working with them on a fractional basis, every single time that I have gone into a dysfunctional organization, one or all of these elements is lacking somewhere. And if you're really going to be looking at it, and almost always it's the core values for sure. The core purpose, sometimes that's dialed in. Client avatar, sometimes that's dialed in. But usually it's the core values that really they don't have them well defined, or they've been defined and they're shoved in some employee handbook somewhere where no one actually could even tell you what they are. So get really clear on these things and have them written down. So the Viper framework, we're not going to go any further into the rest of the Viper framework. That is something we can get into, the infrastructure, process, execution, reporting. We can get into the rest of that in another seminar or webinar, or again, you can buy the Time Wealthy Advantage. But I just want to make sure that you guys understand that business vision component is really necessary to have those 3 C's dialed in, so that when you're selling, you know who you're selling to and how you can solve their problems, the things that are most important to them. Let's talk about the 4 core functions of business. The 4 core functions of business are as follows. They are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your customer's journey happens through your customer's journey through your company happens in that order. First lead gen, then sales, then operations, then accounting. And it's important for you to recognize, especially in the selling function, because you're kind of critical to tying it all together. You're the one main element that's going to make sure that the lead generation is saying the right thing, and you're picking up and handing them off, or taking the handoff, and then as the relay race goes, you're handing them through fulfillment, and then afterwards you're still selling, right? You're still selling, you're still asking for those referrals, you're still keeping in touch and making sure that the billing is good, right? Like, that's the unique thing about selling. So I want to make sure that you understand how important your function is. The lead generation function, it lets the world know that you're out there through a variety of marketing approaches. And there's all sorts of different approaches. There's, outbound lead generation, inbound lead generation, direct response type, where you're actually sending out direct mail pieces, or it could be even email marketing, it could be networking, there's all sorts of different approaches, and affiliate marketing and joint ventures and all these different things, right? All these different aspects. But effective selling actually starts in the lead generation function. And you start that by delivering massive amounts of value to your client avatar. And your whole job is to create trust with the prospect. Remember, we're trying to create raving fanatics in your organization. So that is really, really important. And I see a couple people have just signed in. Let us know where you're from and what it is, what kind of line of work that you're in. But again, your whole job is to create trust with the prospect. Again, by creating trust, you're demonstrating competence, and you're showing high degrees of character. Your whole job is to create trust with them. Now, there's a couple things which will trigger trust, and these are pretty easy trust triggers. Like thinking, well, why should I trust you? Well, think about it. You could be demonstrating an authority, that you're the authority in some way. And how do you develop or demonstrate authority? Well, you could show your credentials. You could show authorship, right? Authority and authors are, you could write a book. You could write white papers. You can do things like that, which will demonstrate your authority. That's going to be an important trust trigger for a lot of people. There's something known as affinity. Remember earlier when I was talking about the 4 psychological, what is it? The ALIA, right? The psychographics. Sorry, I was thinking psychological, but it's actually psychographics. When you're thinking of psychographics, that the 4 areas around determining the psychographics: attitudes, lifestyles, interests, and aspirations, right? So your attitudes, lifestyles, and interests and aspirations. Well, when you understand them in that way, in their interests, that's where you have a shared interest. Oh, you're a fisherman? I'm a fisherman. Oh, you're a golfer? I'm a golfer. Oh my gosh, did you see the football game last night? Oh my gosh, what a heartbreaker, right? So this is the sort of thing where you have affinity is a shared interest. It could be even a shared geography. Oh, you grew up in the Midwest? Where'd you grow up? Or, oh, you grew up in Illinois? Yeah, I grew up in Indiana, right? Now I grew up in New York. So anytime someone in New England maybe talks about winters or fall or something like that, I have a shared affinity with them. So that's important when you're creating that trust trigger. Another one is through demonstration. Demonstration is where you're demonstrating credibility. You're showing them that you know what you're talking about. And that's a very powerful trust trigger, just to show people, hey, let me show you a quick trick on how to do X, Y, or Z. Think about the most compelling ads that you've ever seen. It teaches you something. It shows you something. It demonstrates that they know what they're talking about. Endorsement, that's a pretty easy one, right? If you get a pro football player or someone like that that endorses what it is that you do, that's an easy one. And that could be a trust trigger. Demonstrating vulnerability is another way to demonstrate or create trust with people. And finally, by association. Association, let me go back to vulnerability real quick, because there was one that I always skip over, and I want to make sure that I actually talk about it. Vulnerability is something also where you can show them a potential shortcoming, and where you're demonstrating like I really messed this up. Oh, you did? Yeah, man, when I started out in business, man, I messed up so much, I almost went bankrupt. That should demonstrate some vulnerability. That's also known as a damaging admission. A damaging admission. It takes you off of this pedestal that maybe people have put you on. You're like, oh, he's actually just a regular guy. She's actually just a regular gal. And some of the ones where I feel where even among women, especially mothers, where they talk about mom guilt, like, oh, I feel so guilty about putting any time or effort into my own self because I feel like I should be putting into my kids. Right? That mom guilt thing is a very real thing, especially among females, especially among moms. So that is something where you can demonstrate vulnerability, and that will trigger trust. That last piece is association. An association, again, is like a correlation or a connection. So where, oh, you might be connected to the Better Business Bureau. Oh, I'm a member of the Better Business Bureau. Oh, you're a member of the Chamber of Commerce? Yeah, so am I, right? That's associated link. It's similar to affinity, but it's not the same thing, because affinity is more like a shared interest, where association is like a shared association with something else, like a correlation or some sort of connection. So again, I just want you to think about the different ways that you don't necessarily need all of them. One or two really powerful ones. Generally, demonstration is a really good trust trigger for a lot, but you can also trigger trust using any combination of those things. Let's look at this other piece here. Remember, I talked about demonstrating competence, and the fastest way to create trust is to demonstrate competence. It's to show that you know what you're talking about. So that's everything there. So remember, when you can't possibly demonstrate or reveal any sort of competence if you're not clear on your core purpose, your core values, or client avatar. Like, it is really going to be difficult for you to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about unless you know these three areas. All right. So because the more clear you are, it makes it much easier to market to them, right? And it makes it much easier to deliver value to them, and consequently much easier to sell to them when you are more clear on these three areas of your business, your part of business vision. Remember, the market judges you by your samples. So the value of your samples has to be really high. You can't give them crap. Your market judges you by what you give away for free. And if you're not giving away stuff that's of high value, how else are they going to judge you? So this is what's going to make it easier when you get into the discovery call, because you've already demonstrated some value. You've already demonstrated, like, okay, hey, let's hop on a quick discovery call and see what that could be like to work together. We're going to be talking about discovery call here in just a little bit. But this is why, when you're showing them value, give them a little bit of value up front so they know what it is that you're capable of. And this is where we're going to be heading into what's called a solutions-based framework. Sometimes I call this a consultative-based framework, where you're basically acting as their sales consultant. You're not there to sell anything to them. You're there to consult with them. So that's the 4 core functions of business. Now let's get into the discovery call. So this is about aligning your lead generation and sales. And the confused mind will always say no. This is why you have to be in alignment with your 3C's of business vision, your core purpose, your core values, your client avatar. Ideally, the person you're selling to, the person you're having a conversation with, they align with your core values. They understand the core purpose. They know that they're probably a member of the client avatar that you can most help. And if they don't feel like they are, they will be confused and they will say no, right? So all this effort, all the lead generation lead generation effort and sales effort, everything has to be in alignment because they are going to deliver. Hold on, sorry. Hit the wrong way. This is all going to be driving these people to your core offer, and your core offer is where your whole. This is the thing that you're hoping to actually talk to them about, your core offering. Because if you're not clear in your core offering, it's like, well, we can do a little bit of this or we can do this. It just depends on what you want. If you give people too many choices, they're going to end up choosing none. So this is why you really have to have a core offer, and then you could always have a downsell from there or an upsell later on. But if you're offering like, well, you can do this or this or this or this or this or this, really whatever it is that you want. It was interesting. Most people won't choose either one. They won't choose any of those options. There was an interesting conversation. It was a book by Joe Sugarman, and he wrote it was a book called Triggers. And Joe Sugarman, for those of you maybe who might be a little bit older, he wrote the blue blocker sunglasses ads that were really popular back in the late 80s and early 90s. And if you got to understand, this was all done through mail order, and they sold 20 million sunglasses. Think about that. Normally you go into a store and try on a pair of sunglasses, and they were able to sell them through mail order. That is remarkable. And that's because the guy was just a literary genius. He knew how to write, and he really knew how to write ad copy that could really convert. But the interesting thing was this. He was working with a watch manufacturer, and they were trying to sell. They had these 7 watches that they were all trying to sell. And he said, don't put all 7 watches out there. And they're like, no, we want to show that we have all these different choices. And he says, don't put all 7 of them on there. And they're like, well, what do you mean? We have 7 different choices. Well, I know, I heard you. Look, if you give people too many choices, they're not going to choose anything. And then he's like, okay, well, let's do this. Let's pick one watch. We're going to run them side by side. We're going to make the same ad. We're going to run the 7 watch offer and the 1 watch offer. The 1 watch offer outsold the 7 watch offer 9-1. 9-1. It's because there was too many choices. So this is where you have to figure out, like, making the core offer, find out the feedback from the core offer, and then give them choices beyond there. Let them get the first no out of the way. That's going to be important consideration in the sales process. Because if they're saying no, and generally the core offer is going to be a higher priced offer, okay? Most people start with lower stuff and then go up. No, you want to maybe look at the higher priced offering, and by seeding them at a higher price. Now, again, it depends on what you're selling. It does depend on what you're selling, but I'm saying for the core offering, this is a methodology that this is a tactic that you can follow. So if you're going down, you're saying, hey, look, here's my core offering, and it's a $5,000 product. Well, they're like, oh my gosh, that's way out of my budget, right? Well, hopefully you've understood their budget through the discovery call. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but this is why it's really important to understand what the core offer is when you're bringing that to your avatar. So let's understand the 15 reasons why people buy. Now, there's 15 reasons why people buy. I'm going to go ahead and take myself down so you guys can see and maybe take a screenshot of these. But there's 15 fundamental reasons why people will buy and why they're going to want to buy potentially from you. Now, they will buy because they want to make money. They want to save money. They want to save time, avoid effort, escape pain. And escaping pain could be emotional pain. It could be physical pain, right? It might be spiritual pain. They want more comfort. They want better health. They want to gain praise. Keep in mind, with better health, it could be less stress, right? They could gain praise, feel more love with their tribe. They want to increase their status. They buy for truth, especially if they have felt lied to in the past. This is something that politicians really key in on, is they'll buy people, they are selling truth, a different brand of truth, especially if other people have felt lied to in the past. They will buy for growth, and that could be education, that could be knowledge, that could be growth in their wellness. People will buy for novelty. They'll buy for more certainty or perceived control, and they will also buy to feel like they're in contribution to others. These are really important considerations when you're looking for reasons for people to want to buy from you. So here's your homework. I want you to take these 15 reasons, and what I want you to do is I want you to think about, how do you, directly or indirectly with your product or service, how do you help them make money? Directly or indirectly, how do you help them make money? And come up with as many reasons as you possibly can. And you might say, well, Mark, I don't help people make money. Not directly. Yeah, but maybe indirectly. Get a little creative with your answers. And maybe come up with 10 different ways that you help, directly or indirectly, help people make money. How do you help them save money? Directly or indirectly? How do you help them save time? Directly or indirectly, right? Imagine if you came up with 10 different reasons under each one of these categories. Now you've got 150 ways that you can help someone. Does that make sense? And that adds to what's known as your requisite variety of information. So when you're in that selling conversation, you've already thought that through to say, oh, you know what? We actually do help you save a little bit of money. That's not really the main premise of what we do, but this is something that's important to you, and I think it's relevant to bring up. Would I bring up all 150? No, because chances are 140 of them are not relevant to that avatar, but there's probably 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Maybe 10 that would be. So this is why it's important to know this stuff in advance. So let's talk about the actual discovery call. The discovery call, now again, this is generally what I use for a higher ticket sort of sale, or it might be something that's ongoing. Could be insurance, it could be a car, it could be coaching, it could be whatever it is that you do, right? I work as a strategist. Sometimes I work for people, that are individual on individual solopreneurs. Other times I'm working for people who have larger businesses. And this discovery call, this initial call, is really, really important, and it helps to qualify your prospects. So you might have other ways to qualify them as buyers, but here's the interesting thing, that you have to get them to trust you. And this is where you're going to be demonstrating that competence. So the first question right out of the gate that I'm going to be asking is, how soon are they looking to address whatever problem that they have? They're clearly calling you for something. And if they're contacting you in some way and you're getting on this quick 15-minute discovery call, they're not calling you because they're hungry, right? Like, well, I don't sell food. I'm an attorney. I don't sell food, right? You're not calling me because they want a pizza, right? Well, how soon are they looking to address this particular issue? That's really important for them to ask, or for you to ask up front, because if you assume that they're calling and making the assumption that because they're calling now that they want to solve the problem now, that may be an incorrect assumption. They may have title work that they need cleaned up on a property that they own, but it's just not bandwidth that they have to mess with right now. They just want to know how much time, how long will that take? So as soon as you understand this, it really will frame how much more effort that you're going to be putting into the conversation as it matures, right? But it's important you get that information out as soon as possible. And sometimes they haven't really given any thought. They go, I don't know, maybe soon, right? I never really gave it much thought. Okay, well, that's the reason that we're having this conversation. The next question is, what kind of budget are they working with, right? Like, all right, hey, so I understand this is the problem. Do you have a budget in mind that you're working with, right? Or this is where you kind of lay things out and say, hey, just letting you know, I think I understand the scope of your problem. This might be somewhere between $7,000 to $12,000. Is that kind of what you had in mind? Or what were you thinking? Now, generally, I might want to seed them at a higher level. I'd say, I generally don't say the range too much. I might say, hey, this could cost as much as 12 to 15,000. Or is that something that you're prepared to pay? That would be something that I would want to know. I'd want to establish the budget as early as I can in the discovery call. Just find out what's going on. At this point, you probably had 5 to 10 minutes of conversation with them. They've already told you why, their cat needs a whiskerectomy, and the vet that gave the whiskerectomy completely botched it up, and now Whiskers has only got whiskers on one side, right? Like, it's whatever it is. They've already told you this. Okay, cool. Thanks for the how quick, how soon are you looking to address this issue? So you've been talking to them for a number of minutes at this point. And do you have a budget in mind that you're working with, right? And then third are, who are all the decision makers? This is really important. I can't tell you how important it is to understand who all the decision makers are, because when I head into the sales and selling conversation, this is going to be important, because if I show up at the selling conversation and all the decision makers are not there, I might, depending on the sales call, I might pull that into neutral and say, you know what, let's just do this when all the decision makers can be here. Because no offense, I don't want to repeat myself. And to be honest with you, I was under the assumption that all the decision makers would be here today. So that way it's not being repeated and everything else. Number 4, have you ever worked with someone in my industry before? This is a really important question to ask up front. And the reason why that's so important is because when you're asking that question up front, that gives you a little history of where they come from. And it opens up the conversation to say, okay, well, let me tell you a little bit about how we work. Whether it's good or bad. Have you ever worked with someone? Cool. How did that go? Well, it was great. It was terrible. Okay, great. Let me tell you how we work. Either answer. Oh, it went really good. Okay, cool. Let me tell you how we work. Oh, it was awful. Okay, cool. Let me tell you how we work. Either answer. So, that was, have you ever worked with someone in my industry before? And, oh, okay, cool. If they have, cool. How did it go? The last thing that I do is I ask people for a referral. Now, you might be thinking, dude, you've been talking to this person for 15 minutes. Yes, 15 minutes, but I am going to ask for a referral up front. Now, here's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to come back to this at the end. But I'm going to ask for the referral right now. And I'm going to say, hey, look, and this is generally how I do it. Hey, look, it seems like I might be able to help you. All right. I'm going to ask you for a referral. I want you to think of someone who maybe could use what product or service it is that I have, because I get a lot of business from referrals. In fact, I rely on referrals as part of my lead generation, as part of my marketing. So I want you to think about someone who you might be able to refer to me. And because you don't really know me yet, right? So, and I've got to perform for you, it's going to put the onus back on me, because I'm asking for the referral up front that, hey, I'm going to really work my tail off for you. So could you maybe give some thought to who you could maybe refer? And is it okay if we revisit that again? So I made that a little bit more wordy than necessary just for the teaching point. It would probably sound more like this. Hey, I know this is probably a little premature because you really don't know me, but I work my tail off for my people because I get a lot of referrals. Would it be okay if we circle back and maybe you give it some thought in terms of who you might be able to refer to me, and maybe we can circle back on that on a later date? Is that okay? That's generally how I would do it. So asking permission for the referral, not necessarily asking for the referral in that moment. And that's an important thing. And I make sure that I do that then, because when I do ask, they've had time to think about it, and it's not being sprung on them for that first time. All right. So this is, again, we talked about why people hate selling. It's like you feel like you have to convince someone to do something they don't want to do. Like you're holding people's heads underwater, hate asking people for money. You feel like you're bothering people. I get it. So this is where we're getting actually into the selling conversation. If you did not do the discovery call well, this is going to go poorly. You have to do the discovery call, and you have to ask those questions, and you have to go through those steps. Because if you don't, you're walking into a sales conversation where you don't have any real control. You don't have any real knowledge. So this, again, the sales conversation, it just continues the conversation that was started by the marketing approach. The first thing that I do is I enter into bonding and rapport with them. The bonding and rapport, as I've sat down, so, I'm looking at you like, James, I say, hey, James, it's good to see you again. Thanks so much for meeting with me. Oh, and I understand you're just the only decision maker. That's cool, right? I wouldn't necessarily say that, but if I sit down and it's James and Joe, and Joe's not there, I'm like, are we waiting for Joe? Because I mentioned that he was one of the decision makers. Oh, Joe had to reschedule. He's got he's got a sick iguana at home. Okay, tell you what, let's reschedule, right? Because it's important that I have Joe and everybody here all at one time. No, I'll pass on the word to him. No, I really don't feel comfortable with that. And I might actually blow up the sale, or not the sale, but the conversation in that moment, because that tells me that they may not, they're going to jerk me around. I don't want to waste my time, because this person might just be fishing information out of me. And if they're not going to respect me enough to tell me that Joe's not going to be there, what's it going to be like actually doing work for them? So it really paints a bad thing starting out of the gate, that if they're there. Now, generally what I will do in advance of this is, hey, James, I'm on my way. Just making sure that you and Joe are still going to be there. Yep, absolutely. So, grease the skids a little bit. Make sure that everyone's going to be there the day before, or maybe even the morning of, if it's something like that. But again, I understand that emergencies happen. Say, great. If for any reason that both of you can't be there, just let me know. We can absolutely reschedule, no problem. So that's as I head into the bonding and rapport. Once I'm there, I'm just having conversations and I'm listening for some specific things. And I'm going to get back to this in a second, but the bonding and rapport, I'm asking specific questions, and you're going to hear a specific question that's going to come up here in a minute, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. We're just chit-chatting, talking about the weather. And generally, most salespeople have trouble transitioning out of the bonding and rapport and actually starting the selling conversation. I'm going to give you a really easy script to say that. It's something super easy, and it's not greasy at all. So most times, especially salespeople who have like a bad relationship with money, with like, oh my gosh, I got to sell. Ugh. What happens is they don't know how to transition into the selling conversation. Generally, what I'll say is this. All right, well, I guess I should probably earn my paycheck, so we should probably get started. That's it. I kind of wait for that natural lull in between. We're telling dad jokes or whatever the heck. And then during that period of time, like, okay, well, I need to respect your time, and you need to earn my paycheck. So we probably should talk about your life insurance or whatever you're there for. Okay. That's a great way to transition. They're like, yep, absolutely. Okay. All right. So before we get started, we're actually started, even though I say before we get started, we're heading into what's called the upfront contract. Before we get started, I just wanted to tell you, look, before we get into anything, we're going to be heading into an upfront contract, and we're going to be talking about that upfront. That is going to be important. I'm going to get into that here in just a little bit. Okay. So we go from the bonding and rapport into the upfront contract. Then I'm going to uncover that a little bit more. I'm going to go into more detail here in a little bit. Then we uncover their actual pain. We demonstrate competence, right? And then we do a post sell. So again, kind of walk through that bonding and rapport section a little long up front, because I want you to understand how important that is. And that's really going to set the stage for the upfront contract, uncovering pain, demonstrating competence, and then doing a post sell. So let's talk about a little bit about bonding and rapport. Again, we're going to reestablish that emotional connection that we established during the discovery call. That's important. We're listening for their fears, and we're listening for their limiting beliefs. Even though we may be chit-chatting about whatever, I'm listening for the things that they're afraid of. They're like, oh, like you might be talking about the beach trip that the family was on. Like, oh, where was that at? And they're like, oh, we went to Clearwater Beach. You're like, oh my gosh, I love Clearwater. Like, when's the last time you were there? Like, oh man, that was such a great trip. We were there a couple of years back. Blah, blah, blah. We haven't been back. Oh, okay. They haven't been back. Oh, are you planning on going anytime soon? No, vacations are tough to come by. Are you listening? Are you listening for what they're saying? Are you listening for what they're not saying? Those are the sorts of things. What are they afraid of? They're afraid that time might be running out. These are the things you need to be paying attention to as a salesperson. So don't take that for granted. Listening for limiting beliefs. Yeah, man, there's just not enough time in the day. Okay, really? Because I have a pretty limited time too, but I was able to get a lot of things done because I'm very efficient at what I do, right? As a strategist. So I'm listening for their fears. I'm listening for the things that are really important to them. During that bonding rapport, now I'm transitioning out, right? Well, okay, I guess I should probably earn my paycheck. Let's talk about you a little bit, right? Let's talk about, let's get started. We probably need to get started. Okay, yep, let's do it. So now I'm transitioning into the upfront contract. as I transition into the upfront contract, I'm going to say, hey, listen, before we get started, this is part of the upfront contract. Hey, before we get started, I just want to let you know that you can totally tell me no. Okay? Now, here's what I'm going to give you this framework. No, no, yes, yes, biggest fear. No, no, yes, yes, biggest fear. When people are talking and they're saying, hey, look, but listen, before we get started, I just want to let you know, and I want you to listen for the 2 no's, I want you to listen for the 2 yeses, and I want you to listen for the biggest fear. Listen, Joe, before we get started, I just want to tell you, if we're going to be talking back and forth here, if at any time you just feel like this isn't the best fit for you, and I'm not the company for you, I'm not the guy for you, you can totally tell me no. You know, my wife's still going to love me. I'm still going to eat dinner tonight. It's totally fine. But just keep in mind too, though, is that if I feel that at some point that I'm not the best fit for what you need, I might tell you no. Right? So, I just want you to understand that. But you know, does that make sense for you? Right? Okay. Get a shy yes. All right. But if on the other hand, it seems like you like what I'm doing, you like what I'm offering, and I think that we're a good fit, you know, you say yes, I say yes, we could figure out what that looks like on the other side. Does that make sense? Get them to say shy yes. Yeah. Okay, great. Look, my biggest fear is that you might meet with someone else and you might have some other conversations, and they're still not going to really address the problems that's going to get you and your family back at Clearwater Beach, and, you know, sometime within the next 6 or 8 months. So with all that in mind, is there anything in particular that you're hoping to accomplish today? All right, now let's press timeout and come back to this. The first no was to say, hey, listen, Joe, you can totally tell me no. My friends are still going to like me. You know, my wife is still going to spend my money. You know, don't worry about it. You absolutely have the right to tell me no. Now, it takes the pressure off right out of the way to say, look, you have permission to tell me no. It's totally fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And a lot of times I'll even make it funny, like, hey, you can tell me no. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I had my feelings removed in the Marine Corps, right? Something like that. You can be funny with this. But look, if I don't feel like we're the best fit for you, I might tell you no. And something I do say is, look, I would rather you be a satisfied customer of someone else's than a dissatisfied customer of mine. And that is really powerful, because we're like, oh, wow, yeah, that makes total sense. Okay. So look, let's rewind. Look, I just want you to know that you can totally tell me no if we're not the best company for you. But just keep in mind that I might tell you no because we're just not the best fit. Like, I would much rather you be a satisfied customer of someone else's than a dissatisfied customer of mine. Does that make sense? Yep, absolutely. Get them to say yes. Okay, great. But if, you know, we both decide that it's a good fit, you say yes, I say yes, and we can figure out what that looks like on the other side. Does that make sense to you? Again, get them to say yes. That's called a shy yes. And getting them to say yes is an important part of the sales process. So you get to the big yes at the very end. Okay, my biggest fear is, now really, is it my biggest fear? No, it's not my biggest fear. My biggest fear has nothing to do with them. It's their biggest fear. So when I say my biggest fear is, I'm actually addressing their biggest fear. And that's what I was learning from them back in the discovery call, or back in the discovery call and during the bonding and rapport session. So that's why I'm saying you're listening for the biggest fear, because you're going to be reciting that back to them. My biggest fear is that you're going to get into a product or service that's not really going to solve the problem that you need, and it's not going to get you back on the boat with your family anytime soon. All right. Now the transition here is important. I always ask the same thing. Is there anything in particular that you're hoping to accomplish from our meeting today? And they generally say, no, just getting information, this and that. Okay. And that is a perfect segue into the next part of the sales conversation. You always ask, and no one's ever going to say, well, I'm really looking for these very, very specific details. Sometimes they will. Sometimes they're really dialed in and they know exactly what it is that you want, what they want, but it's pretty rare. It's pretty rare. So what do you want to accomplish today? That's the last piece. So no, yes, yes, biggest fear. Okay, great. So is there anything specific that you're hoping to accomplish today? That takes us out of bonding rapport, upfront contract into uncovering their pain. Uncovering their pain is pretty simple. Shut up. Just listen. Ask good questions. Be curious. Then listen. Don't always try to find a way to shove your product on top of them. That's not selling. That's being a bully. So you really want to stop and think about this, where you're asking questions and then listen. Listen. Use the story format to demonstrate, to ask questions and demonstrate competence. The 3T story format is pretty straightforward. So when you're asking questions, you're using title, triggering event, and transformation. And when you're telling, like, again, this story format is, oh my gosh, yeah, people get transported when you tell stories. So when you're asking questions and they say, oh my gosh, yeah, I really ran into a real problem with my car, and now we're having to buy a new one. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I remember when I was 19 and I ripped the running boards off of my father's conversion van, and man, was he mad. That's my title. 19-year-old who can't drive worth a crap. Okay, that's my title. Triggering event was I ripped the running boards off my father's conversion van. That was the triggering event, which meant he had to go and buy a whole new van because the running boards weren't, there was an older vehicle, wasn't worth fixing. That was a transforming event. Okay, so there's this title, triggering event, transformation. That's a really powerful framework. It's a very, very simple framework in telling the story, because when you tell the story to your prospect, they're transported. They feel like you understand them. And that is really, really important, because if they don't feel like they understand, like, oh man, that guy gets me or that gal gets me, they're not going to want to do business with you. Remember, people do business with people who they know, like, and trust. And that is you telling the story and giving them the story in the 3T story format is really powerful. Remember, your whole job is to create trust with the prospect. So now that you've uncovered their pain and you've understood their level of pain, this is where you're going to start to demonstrate your competence. This is where you're going to say, okay, cool, I think I understand. So let me just understand your problem. What your problem is you have this issue, and this issue, and you're really looking for some sort of solution to that. Is that fair to say? Yes. Okay, great. Or no, not really. Okay, well, let's unpack some more pain. And the thing is, if people are not in enough pain to act, it won't matter. Like if you call somebody, and I get this a lot with people who are wholesalers in the real estate world, and they're calling on people who have distressed properties, and they say, hey, I noticed that your properties are in tax sale. And they're like, yes. And they're like, cool. Are you wanting to do some sort of a deal on that? And they're like, not really. Oh, okay. Because you're going to lose that property. They're like, honestly, I couldn't care less. That was a property that was willed to me. I have no emotional connection to it. I'm already retired. I have more money that I could care, that I care to have. I really don't want to even spend another moment thinking about that property. Oh, okay, great. They are a level 1 in terms of pain, right? Like from a 1 to a 10, could not care less. If that was if that was someone's home that they were living in, and they've got 3 kids that they're trying to get through high school, and they've got another 3 years to live in that property, are they in much more pain? Maybe so, right? Maybe you can't say yes for sure, but you got to understand their level of pain. And sometimes you just say, look, I'm just trying to understand how motivated you are, from a 1 to a, I don't know, like a 1 to a 10, with 10 being the most, like how big of a deal is this for you to get this problem solved? And they were like 14. Okay, cool. That's helpful. So just understand to quantify and measure that pain is helpful. So from uncovering pain, this is when I demonstrate competence. Okay, cool. Well, let me show you how I work. Let me show you what it is that I do. And this is where I'm demonstrating competence. But you always have to make sure that you're continually advancing the conversation towards the sale or towards disqualification, one or the other. There's no, if someone starts interjecting some irrelevant things, just smile and say, okay, cool. Yep. Hey, so about this other thing, redirect the conversation back towards the sale. Because if you continue to allow this, you're allowing them to derail it. And it's just a way of deflecting them from making decisions. And sometimes they need to be held accountable to making a decision. Even if that decision is no, that would be better than, oh, let me think it over. This, like, that's the sort of thing that I absolutely don't want. Okay. So when all the questions are answered, when all the questions are answered. So they might be asking questions. I'm delivering competence. Does this make sense? Yep. What about this? Yep. How about this? Any other questions that I can answer for you? And I'm answering all of those questions. And they say, okay, cool. And is there anything else that I can answer for you? Is there any other questions that you may have? A lot of times when people are ready to move forward, probably close to 70% of the time, I will get people after we've been through this whole thing. They will say, well, what's it like to work together? Right? Or where do we go from here? They're the ones asking for the sale, usually about 70% of the time. And part of that is because I've qualified them so well in the discovery call. I don't get a lot of people who come to me that don't have the money, need to ask their spouse, or, generally because the spouse is there because I want them part of the conversation, or, need to think it over. None of that. It's pretty rare. So sometimes I get to think it over, or sometimes they say, well, I want to do this, but the timing just isn't right. And because of what I do as a consultant and strategist, timing absolutely needs to be right. So they say, well, what's about timing? They say, well, I've got this project coming up. I've got tax season coming up. I've got this coming up. Okay, fair enough. I just want to make sure I understand, how do you want me to hold you accountable to this decision or whatever? But generally when all the questions are asked and they don't ask, okay, they're like, okay, is there anything else I can answer for you? They're like, nope. I'm like, okay, so here's the big close. Here's the big close. Are you ready? So are you ready to sign? Right? None of that. None of this hokey crap in terms of poor salesmanship. This is what you're going to say. Okay. So is there any other questions I can answer for you? And they're like, look at each other. Nope. We're good. Okay. All right. Well, how do you want to proceed? And I stopped talking. I wasn't frozen there for a minute. I stopped talking. Because the minute I start filling the void with talking because I'm uncomfortable, I've just blown the sale. So this is going to be the most uncomfortable part of the selling conversation for you if you have a bad relationship with money. It gets easier after the first 4 or 5 of them. I will tell you that. The first time I did it, I wanted to throw up all over my computer. But listen, okay, any other questions? Nope. All right. Well, how do you want to proceed? And you give them that silence. If they're uncomfortable, that is on them. That is on them. That is not on you. You've asked them how they want to proceed. You didn't ask them to pull out a checkbook. You didn't ask them to pull out a credit card. This is a conversation that they may be having, and they need that silence to think, to process. So asking them how they want to proceed. In that moment, they will either say, well, yeah, we're ready to go. Yeah, I think we're ready to do this. Okay. Or I'm not sure. Okay. Well, what are you not sure about? What are you not sure about? Is there any other questions? I mean, it's a lot of money. It's this, it's that. Okay. All right. Listen, and I'm not going to get into the objections and all, overcoming all that. That's not what I want to do here. Generally, if someone does truly want a moment to think it over, I don't have a problem with it. And I know a lot of salespeople say, no, you got to force them into making that decision in that moment. There's no be-backs. No, that is for amateurs. I'm sorry. But the reason why salespeople don't want to get the sale in that moment is because they don't want to think about it again. And that's because they are lazy. They don't want to take the time to put them into a CRM and think about picking up the darn phone and calling someone once again, right? And asking them, they want to get that sale in that moment so they can move on. I get it. I do get it, because it does take a lot of extra work on the back end. However, their sales are going to suffer because unless they close in that moment, it is all but done. So I just want you to think about that in that moment. If they say, well, I really truly do want to think it over, what I will say is, all right, look, if you're a coach, right? Or you can do this in any aspect, right? You could be selling roofs, you could be selling cars. You can say, hey, all right, look, hey, and I do this. I actually, because let's face it, theater matters. So I'm going to put my consulting hat on here just a quick second. Okay. Or I'm going to put my coaching hat on here for just a second. A lot of times I'll say coaching hat. I'm going to put my coaching hat on here for a second. Listen, if you want to think it over, that's great. How do you want me to hold you accountable to making a decision? Even though that decision is no. How do you want me to hold you accountable to making that decision? And I stop talking. And they'll say, well, I mean, we'll probably talk it over, probably, maybe in 3 months. 3 months. You want to wait 3 months to make this decision. And at that point, I'm probably going to say, okay, so to me, that's no. And that's totally fine, right? Because if someone's trying to delay a decision for 3 months, depending on the situation, right? I mean, depends on what it is. Or if it's something unreasonable for your field, then you'd say, all right, listen, that's totally fine. But to me, that's a no. That to me, that's just you don't want to do it, and that's totally fine. And that's all right, right? I might blow it up. But what I would generally say is, hey, look, or if they say, hey, look, give me a call, say Wednesday. Okay, cool. How about I give you a call Wednesday? I'll call you at, say, 5 o'clock. Is that all right? And I just don't want to, is 5 o'clock okay? And I put it on my calendar. So they know that it's like, hey, I'm calling at 5 o'clock. This is not like they're not going to be at ballet practice or, softball games or whatever. Like, no, can I call you? What time should I call you on Wednesday? Well, call us at 6:30 Wednesday night. Perfect. I'll call you at 6:30 on Wednesday night. All right, great. Have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you then. Right? I'm setting the appointment to follow up with them. That way, if I know that they're just not trying to avoid me or anything else, I'm setting an appointment for when I'm actually following up. All right. So we went through the main parts of this: bonding rapport, upfront contract, uncovering pain, demonstrating competence. And now I'm going to be heading into something called the post sell. Let's say, for argument's sake, that they actually bought, okay, because you're a great salesperson and you delivered a really good presentation and you're able to demonstrate lots of competence and they trust you. Now they're saying, well, I'm ready to move forward. Okay, great. Before I allow them to pay, hand me a check, swipe the card, whatever, I'm going to ask this one question. Hey, listen, I know we're all getting along right now and everything's all, we're all smiling at each other and we're all in love. Hey, listen, can I ask you a quick question? Why are you okay to move forward right now? But I just want to make sure that I understand why you're okay to say yes. And it's important to get this answer. The reason why is because many people, in fact, most people, will buy emotionally and then they justify logically. By asking this question, I'm asking them in that moment to justify it logically. And why this is because when they go home or they talk to their neighbor or they talk to their know-it-all brother-in-law and they're like, dude, you totally got screwed over. I could have got you a much cheaper deal, right? Like whatever it is, that they have already thought through the logic in terms of why they feel comfortable to say yes. That way, this is vastly going to reduce the amount of people who call back and say, man, I really thought it over. I really want my money back, right? I have done this for years. And the few times that I have not done it, and actually I had one person call me, send an email. It was like middle of the night on a Sunday. I'm pretty sure like Saturday into Sunday. It was like 2 a.m. They sent this email. I want my money back. They bought it on Friday. They wanted their money back on basically Saturday night. So, okay. That's the only time it's ever happened to me. But the reason, again, I did not ask this question. Why are you okay to move forward right now? And it will vastly make things much easier for you, especially if they do call back and they say, hey, I do want my money back. Well, now you can say, well, I'm really confused. Why I thought it solved this problem and this problem and this problem. But a lot of times I don't beat them up for it. They really want their money back. I just give it to them. But again, it's rarely happened and it will vastly diminish if you ask that post-selling question. So that's everything that I've got. I've got a couple of just real quick success strategies. Look, you've got to follow them. You've got to follow up with them. You've got to follow through with them. You just have to follow them over and over and over again. And I want you to keep in mind this one thing. There's something called the peak end rule. The peak end rule is that most people will remember the peak of an event and they will remember the end of the event. So if I was to poll the room right now, for the dozen or so people that are on this call, and I say to you, hey, what is the biggest takeaway? Many of you will come back to the peak thing that you remembered, and you'll come back to something that I just said a few minutes ago. Okay. So that's known, like think about a movie that someone say, hey, how was that movie? You're like, oh my gosh, there was this one scene that was absolutely amazing or was absolutely hilarious. That's the peak of the event. The ending is also what they tend to remember. So I just want you to remember that during the sales process and during the fulfillment, you have to remember that people are still going to remember the peak and they're going to remember the end. You can control the peak, right? Well, like you can control the end, but they're the ones who determine the peak. So you have to make sure that you're making this entire event a really good, memorable event for them so they become raving fanatics. Remember, bring massive value, deliver massive value over and over and over again based on their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations. You want to align your lead generation and your sales, make sure that they're the same conversation, that it's again, you're delivering that fantasy for them, you're delivering that meaning for them, not just the features and the benefits, but it goes all the way to the meaning. This is what it means for them to have this insurance policy. This is what it means for them to have this brand new roof on this house. This is what it's going to mean for them to have this brand new car that's just going to make them feel like the toughest guy on the block or the coolest gal in the parking lot, right? So this is the thing I'm talking about when you've got when you've got something that you're trying to sell, you really want to make sure that all that's in alignment. Bring solutions to them. Remember, you're their consultant. They're relying on you. They're asking you to be the consultant, to be the person who knows things. And this is really, really important. So, and then again, having that support system is really, really, really critical. One quick thing I'm going to offer to you guys. I just want to bring this up. I'm going to put this up on the screen here, but I want you to think, one last thing. Sorry, I just hit my slide here. I just want to make sure I bring this last point. Don't forget to get the referral, right? So once that is done at the very end, you've got to bring them back and say, hey, remember the referral that we talked about in the early days, in the beginning of the discovery call? Is there anybody that you think that you can, that you want to, refer to me? Make sure you go back and circle back and get that referral. So one other thing I do want to offer to you guys is having a support system. I'm just going to share this kind of silly story here. Of course, it wasn't really silly at the time. This guy he's a bank robber. He's actually holding a gun at a teller and, trying to rob a bank. And back in 1995, this guy, MacArthur Wheeler and Clifton Earl Johnson, robbed 2 banks in Pittsburgh without any attempts to disguise their face. And of course, the cops caught him a few days later, and the guys were unbelievably shocked that they were caught. Well, the reason they were surprised is because they covered their face in lemon juice, and they thought that would make them invisible to the cameras. Yes, I'm not kidding. So much so, these 2 researchers, Dunning and Kruger, they said, okay, so let's do a study on what false confidence looks like. And this is what false confidence looks like. So it basically goes through this peak. It all starts down here at the bottom where you're very low on confidence and you're very low on competence. You don't really know what you don't know. But you start out very confident really early on until it peaks and you get to what's called the peak of Mount Stupid. The peak of Mount Stupid. And then all of a sudden you start realizing that you don't know what you don't know, and your competence, you're starting to learn a little bit, but your confidence takes a huge hit and you head down into the valley of despair. And for many business owners and many entrepreneurs, this is where they go. And unfortunately, this is where they stay. And this is where they start looking around for other opportunities because they're so just disenfranchised. Well, that's where you want to start to think about this. But if you keep moving on, you keep working on your confidence, you keep working on your knowledge, you start up that slope of enlightenment until you eventually get to that plateau of sustainability and have a really high level of confidence. And this is why it's important to have a support system. So what I'm offering to you guys doesn't cost you a nickel. I just want to make sure that this is a tool that you can have in your toolbox where you can head over to our community room. And like I said, this is something that you guys can do. We've got it on. We're just going to go ahead and put the link in the comments section right now, and you guys can join this. Keep in mind, right now it is free to join, but that will change once we get to a certain number, because we're getting closer to that number for sure. So if you want to head over to school.com/strategic boardroom, that is a community that I have for folks who want to ask any questions or really just to be involved in the conversation. So that is everything that I have, everyone. Thank you so very much for sticking around, and I'll see you guys in the boardroom.